You are listening to the Sales Journeyman Podcast, the podcast to help sales professionals and entrepreneurs achieve their goals and impact their industry.
Listen up. If you are here right now, I want you to listen very closely because I believe that this podcast can change your life for the better. If you are a dad right now and you are in sales and you've got 4 kids that are going crazy, you've got a wife you're trying to romance and provide for, and you're coming up to your sales job and you're sitting at your desk and you just don't have the energy to make cold calls. If you're the guy who's working a full-time job and you're just hustling right now on a side business because you have a dream of being successful, if you are an executive right now that leads a team of people and you are finding that you do not have the energy to continue to perform the way that you used to, I think our guest today is going to revolutionize the way you perform in your role. His name is Ritchie Nkana. He is the award-winning author of Body and Bank Connection, founder of the Operator's Edge, and a high-demand speaker known for bridging peak performance with sustainable success. He is a former chartered accountant with over 20 years of experience leading transformation in the banking industry, and Ritchie now empowers high-achieving founders, executives, and professionals to scale without burnout. With certifications in personal training, sports, nutrition, metabolic conditioning, and pain-free performance, Ritchie brings a rare blend of boardroom insight and performance science. His work helps leaders optimize physical vitality as a lever for business growth, longevity, and legacy. Ritchie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Rob, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Of course. Ritchie, I want to kind of talk to you about something that's kind of been going on. It's kind of been a meme in the sales world today, you being involved with both business and fitness. It goes without saying, there's a popular sales trainer, Andy Elliott. He has a rule at his company that if you don't have a six-pack, you're fired. Because how could anyone perform if they are not physically fit? Now, I can tell you this. I've been in sales for about 7 years now, and I can definitely attest that I have seen people who are not in shape, who are indeed overweight, and would even admit that themselves, and they perform just fine. And some of them even are award-winning sales professionals. So I want to kind of ask you, what really is the ROI on healthy living, on maybe physical appearance? Is it overblown? Do people really judge you when they look at you? Like, kind of give us some insight into that, since that is your world.
Yeah, I love that. That's a very, very good, I think, very topical, question, especially in the case of lately. I think you mentioned Andy Elliott. I think he's quite big on that. Yeah, I think fitness is pretty much a foundation stone. And I think that's pretty much the genesis of my book in the case of Body and Bank, right? The body and bank connection, not so much, yes, it could be in the literal sense. We're talking about your body and your bank account in the literal sense, but it could also be as a metaphor. Whatever bank account you're looking to fill, be it your energy bank account, your productivity bank account, it all starts with our bodies. And I think for me, I think that's the biggest thing. Health and fitness to help us to pretty much as that grounding or that foundation for us and how we can actually show up. Guess what? Energy drives execution, right? And we cannot execute without energy. And what drives energy? We have to be healthy in body. And what's so interesting about it, let's go into the science. Studies have shown that when we exercise, we're 20% more productive. I was talking to bankers not very long ago, and that very question came up in the case of, like, I would maybe allude to what Andy was talking about, having a six-pack. But I think that's a little bit overboard, I think, when it comes to, it's not so much about the aesthetics. It's more about what you get on the back of it. When I was talking to fellow bankers, the question I asked them was, what comes to mind when you think of fitness? And it was very interesting because the answer I got was pretty much similar in the case of, like, six-pack, right? I had, I think, one response which was maybe to do with confidence and everything. But for the most part, it's always looked at from an aesthetics perspective. But then I went they go like, oh, Richie, I do understand the benefits of exercise and fitness, but I don't have time for fitness. I need to put food on the table, right? And these are high performers. As you rightly said, people that are actually pretty much elite performers, but they're not really in shape. So how is it that you can have that argument saying that, right, you need to be in shape to do that? So that is something I articulated, I think, to my fellow bankers. It's like, just think about it. Yes, you need to put food on the table, but that is a little bit more counterintuitive. Now, can you imagine what more you can do based on studies that when you exercise, you're 20% more productive, right? We can talk about stress. Like, I come from the banking industry, and the
Yeah.
people I was speaking to at that moment in time were bankers. You're talking about salespeople. That can be a very stressed environment. And guess what happens when you're in that environment? Your cortisol levels are elevated when you're stressed, right? And what do you
Exactly.
need to bring those things down? You need things like serotonin and dopamine, which are happy hormones. And when you exercise, your body, you're feeling, you exercise, guess what? That helps and bring them down. We can talk about cognitive function. Right? There's a study that was found on BDNF. BDNF drives neurogenesis. So it's reproduction of brain cells. And what's so interesting is that when you exercise, when you work out, what? BDNF can be enhanced as much as threefold, 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I was talking to my fellow bankers, like, now, just with just these 3 points I just mentioned or pointed out, do you still think working out is a necessity or an option? They go like, oh, get to think about it now, Richie. It's actually now a necessity. So you see, so I think in my case, I look at exercise more as a driver, as giving me that edge, right? Giving me that, advantage, that unfair advantage. Not so much about the looks. The looks come, or the aesthetics come as a byproduct. They come as a bonus. But it's not so much about having a six pack. It's what you get from putting in that workout, right? So you
Right.
can actually perform at your best.
And I think pretty much anyone can attest to that, right? And I'm guilty as well. I haven't really been working out like I used to, but I used to do lift weights every single morning before work. I used to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu kind of before work, and sometimes I go on my lunch break. And I could definitely attest there is a massive difference in how you feel after doing a moderate to hard workout in the morning, and then coming in, having freshly showered, having had some protein, had some oatmeal, getting in the door and kind of feeling like that. I also think that one thing, to quote another person who's very popular, Alex Hormozy is kind of popular for saying you can be addicted to drugs, addicted to porn, addicted to whatever. As long as you get the work done, you'll be successful. And I get what he's saying, but I think that we judge ourselves based on our image of ourselves, right? And I think that's part of us having that self confidence, knowing that, hey, I'm a guy who gets up at 4 a.m. and I work out. I'm a guy who gets up and I don't do these things. I think there's also an element of your self image, of being proud of yourself for accomplishing that hard workout, that does come out in that productivity. Are there any studies that kind of support that, or is it kind of more, I'm just curious about that element?
Absolutely. And just pointed out the identity shift, right? Because how you do one thing, that pretty much cascades or trickles down into everything else in life, right?
Mm.
And that's the reason little things at times could be bad habits that we do, might not be related to a work, but it's a discipline that we put in, that it's those disciplines
Right.
that pretty much condition us to do other things even better, right? You mentioned confidence. Confidence, I think, was one of the studies that has actually been done. Is it confidence? Because at times in how we look and how we feel, that instills our confidence. But there's a science behind that as well. Because when we exercise, we could talk about depression, for instance. There was a study by UC Davis on depression. They found that people that were depressed had levels of GABA and glutamate suppressed. And what's so interesting is, like, when you work out, when you exercise, GABA and glutamate are actually elevated, right? So at times it's little things like that, because when you exercise, yes, it's not so much, yes, I'm doing this. It's not because I have to, but because I do it because I am that person.
Right.
Right. And when you have that identity shift, that pretty much trickles down in everything. My belief is that you cannot really be run a high performance business on a low performance life.
Mm.
So I think it's all about how is it that you run your life, because that's what cascades to everything else. And that's what I see quite a lot. And this is a foundation of Operator's Edge, I think, as you mentioned earlier, because Operator's Edge, there's so much focus on the tactics, strategies, and the tools, right? It's almost like thinking of a phone. You think of a phone, a 2000 phone, and you're loading it up with 2025 software.
Yeah.
Yes, it might work, but guess what? It will lag, it will glitch, right? It might not work as it should. And that's what's happening, because most of the people like we have is trying to change that operating system behind the person, say, running the business, behind the person running this operation. And it starts with that. And that's identity shift we're just talking about right there. because that then trickles into everything else. It starts with that foundation stone.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point to make, because I'm, again, like this podcast is great for me because
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it as well, having, a career and trying to do some things on the side and having a family and having a podcast and having all this stuff. And I have a McDonald's that's literally right down the street from my house, and the snack wrap is back. The snack wrap is back. It's like, well, I have to get it. It's $3 for a snack wrap. I can eat 4 of those things. And
Convenience, right?
it's convenient. No, it is. It really is
Yeah.
convenience. And I think that even for myself, just kind of speaking to me here, being on that journey, it's like looking at like how I performed when I was on top of my fitness versus now. I'm still good enough now, right? I know the script, I know the sales, I can get it going. But just looking at the energy level and looking what is capable, there is a real massive difference. And there is a difference in your confidence. And I love what you just said about you can't build a high performance career with a low performance life. So, we're talking about fitness. What are some of the like easy low hanging fruit steps someone can take to kind of adjust things in their life that may be taken for granted but would make a massive impact? What have you kind of seen with some of your clients and in your own life? What are some of those easy things people can change right now, maybe in their personal life, that would have more massive success, including fitness and any other area?
Well, absolutely. I think the very starting point is having a reason, deep enough reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where everything falls flat. Think about it, New Year resolution, New Year, right? I call it New Year resolutionism. Talk about beginning of January, the gyms are really jam packed, right? Does it mean those people that sign up come March, right? It's almost empty. Does it mean those people that signed up for those gym memberships want to get in shape, don't want to get in shape March? I don't think so. They still want to get in shape. What has changed is priorities, right? So for the most part, be it business, be it whatever it is you need to change. I've coached everything from personal finances to fitness and everything. And this is a starting point. Before you can even go into technicalities, in the case of like say fitness, you can show somebody how to do a push-up or deadlift or whatever it is. It's getting down to the reason. Do they have that deep enough reason why they want to make that change? And that's the identity shift. Because once you're very clear on that, because guess what? You will be smacked. You will be smacked with life as you get along. Life you will meet life. And when you get slapped in the face with other priorities, how is it that you can stay the course regardless? It's having that deep enough reason. So why is it that I'm making that shift? For me, it's going right deep. And it's not just about those superficial reason like, oh, I want to get in shape because maybe I want to have more energy. No, you need to have such a deeper reason why that is. And it has to almost like be more emotional. And by saying that is, it's about the feeling, right? So because once you have that deep feeling why you want to make that shift, then it's easy to actually do it despite feeling otherwise. I love like what Maya Angelou would say. Angela would say, like, people forget what you do to them, people forget what you say to them, but people don't forget how you make them feel. Right? The feeling is the driver. Right? There's plenty of times I don't feel like working out, but because I have that deep enough reason that I still remember at the moment when I decided to engage myself into the fitness, and I have that deep understanding and that deep enough reason that, right, I just tap into that. It's like fuel and tap. It's like doing despite otherwise.
No, that's really good. That's a great, insight, I feel, because for everything in life, it's like, what is your why? Why are you doing it? I was talking to a friend who right now currently is a stud, like 6'4", 250, and he was just asking me some sales tips, right? And I was just kind of showing him like, okay, well, this is how I would start off a call. We'll use personal training. And I asked him, I said, hey, why do you want to get in shape? He's like, I want to be an example to my kids. I want to be an example to my kids. That's so much more powerful than I want women, or I want fame, or I want this, whatever thing. I want to be an example to my kids. I want my kids to see that I live a healthy life, and I want them to enable that. That's going to drive you to be successful when you're 60 and your body can't physically have I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the steroids will be like when we're 60, but when your body physically and your metabolism physically can't necessarily hold the same muscle you can in your 30s and 20s and even 40s, like that's going to carry you so much further. Oh, I love that. I love also what you said too about like the emotion. You know, one thing I noticed too is that if you in a sales aspect, whatever emotion you are currently feeling in a particular moment is the emotion that will be put onto the call, right? Like
Absolutely.
if you're feeling doubt, they're going to doubt. If you're feeling like this doesn't really matter, they're going to feel that. If you feel passionate and you feel encouraged and you feel this, it's not about always everything that you say. I love scripts, but it's not always what you say. It's how you feel and what you believe in that moment. So I want to transition. I want to ask you, what was your why for working in the banking industry and working in these industries to kind of transition and start kind of to really move into focusing on the body? You mentioned some studies, but what was your why for why you kind of started this business and made this transition?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For me, it was never really, to be honest, if you'd asked me like 15 years ago, whatever it is, I would say like, oh no, you're crazy. There's no way I can actually go into coaching or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
But for me, it was my mess, which turned into my message for
Mm.
in a lot of ways. So I started off, yes, I come from a banking background. Um, and I was good at what I did, money good, rich in the bank, but I would say emotionally bankrupt,
Mm.
right? And it's looking myself in the mirror, I don't like what I see. But looking in the mirror, I don't like what I see. I'm talking about not so much about the aesthetics as we talked about. It's not about this. Yes, maybe I had put on quite a few pounds due to neglect over months and maybe years, but when I look in the mirror, I do not like what I see, how I showed up for my family. I did when I look in the mirror, I did not like the way I showed up for my friends and loved ones. And to be honest, Rob, I did not like the way I did show up for my employers either.
Okay.
And I was scared. I was scared and depressed because I got health conditions that run in my family. And at that rate that I was going, things were not looking good. So I think they say change happens two ways, through desperation or inspiration. For me, it was seriously desperation. And I came across a writing by Bob Proctor, remember that moment in time. It said something like this: you can either be living in a problem or living in a solution. And it was very clear I was living in a problem. Just time for me to shift into a solution. So I did reach out to personal trainers at that time, as we all should look for help. But the solutions that I was getting were just no right for me. You see, I had a very demanding job in banking at that time. The only window I had was late in the evening. Me working with a personal trainer meant me working around their time, which did not
Mm.
work for me. And I like fixing stuff. It's just my mentality, just my attitude. So I thought, right, I'm going to go to the drawing board and see how I can actually fix this. So I started researching, and that's when I came across, I looked at PT. I found that stuff so interesting. So I went deep into that, ended up getting certified in those areas like PT, metabolic conditioning, sports nutrition, but never really for me to actually teach or coach in those areas, but for me to actually help me heal me, sort of like create myself as the person that I want to be. And it was so interesting because from that came the solution. And with that, friends, family, colleagues had asked me, "What, you're making that shift? How are you doing that?" I was like, "Oh, I'm only working out 3 times a week, 20 minutes at a time." Because no way, can you show me how to do it? So that's how the coaching started, right? And it was very, very organic. But then I was like, there's no way. The funny thing about it is, speaking to Ben, because I mentioned earlier, because I would be asked to speak on fitness and stuff like that, I was getting those vibes. Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I was like, no, it's not so much about time, it's the knowledge. But how is it that I can help more people? Because I enjoyed coaching, and I was coaching for free for the longest time
Yeah.
because it was never really about the money, but it was just for me to be able to just, because I loved it. You can't put a value on seeing the transformation on somebody. The
Mm.
smile on the face. I've lost the weight. I'm in the best shape of my life. I paid down my debt. So it was just those little things. And I spoke to a business coach at that time. How is it that I can actually do this? I've got a banking gig going, which is really good. I don't want to leave that, but I also enjoy this thing. How is it I can actually sort of like balance the two? So we worked out ways in which I could bring that in to turn it into a business. And that's how it all started. Yeah, but that was just the fitness, because I thought at that moment in time for me, I was very big on fitness because fitness is a foundation stone pretty much in how we perform. But through coaching over the years, having coached, like I've coached like Fortune 500 leaders over the
Mm.
years, what I found is, on paper, very successful. It seems like it. But yes, they come to me for fitness, but there's other gaps in their lives. It's like, actually goes way beyond fitness. How is it we can fix that? Right. So that's how it evolved from fitness, coaching, or transformation, peak performance. Now it's evolved into Operator's Edge, which is pretty much a 360 kind of view in how we can just show up as better operators behind the business, as opposed to looking at the operations or the hacks and the tools and the strategies by upgrading the operator behind the business, so we can show up with energy, we can show up with clarity, we can show up better in relationships, and we can scale without burnout.
That's awesome. No, that's really cool to see that, right? And it was kind of led by passion, right? You kind of had this passion and you saw the change that it made in your life and you wanted to kind of bring that to others. And I think you said a lot of really cool things there, right? Like you can't put a value on seeing someone's life change. You just can't.
Absolutely.
And that's beautiful. And I think that's true. And I think that also speaks to what you said earlier. You have a missional mindset. And when you have a missional mindset over a money mindset, you're always going to have the edge over any competitors, because there are a lot of people are chasing dollars. And let's get very, very real. If we're in business, we are here to make money. Like, let's be very, very clear about that.
Totally.
But when your mission is so great and your mission is so deep and it goes down to this core of who you are, that's a winning, that you're going to find the way to win. You're never going to lose when you have your mission at forward. So if you're at a company right now and you don't know, whenever you take on a sales job, you should always look at the product, but you also should look at the mission of the company. Because if you don't believe in the company's mission, like we said earlier, it's not going to be successful. And that's what kind of Richie is showing you guys. He went after it and he pursued a mission. He pursued something that changed his life, and it helped him greatly. And I think another thing you said that I kind of want to touch on too, I used to think that like everybody at the executive level was this like deity of business that just had everything all together, everything that was right. I used to think that they were just so much better than everyone in the world because they're an executive. And having had some experience in sitting in executive meetings and getting to know executives and getting to know stuff, you realize like, man, they are not that, they are really not that special. Like, they just worked hard and got to where they are, but there's not that much specialness. So I think that was just kind of like interesting. Like, what problems do you see that executives kind of have that maybe are common traits amongst other people? Like, what have been some things you've seen be common themes, like in like problems that maybe executives have that maybe they work so hard they end up neglecting this area of their life or that area of their life, if you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can just give an anecdotal as well. The thing about it is, it's quite interesting because I was guilty of that. So what you just pointed out there is, there's always this thing, this myth that, on paper, like for me, banking, my motivation to go into banking was money, and the money was good. The money is good, but then I found out soon enough that there's more to life than just the money. Right. So I think what I see, to your question on what I've seen, I think having coached sort of like execs and people that are unsuccessful in paper, which I think for the most part, even in my case, people would look at me, go like, a successful banker, you're doing very good, right? Or why would you want to make that shift? I was struggling, right? I was asked, I was talking to business leaders not very long ago, actually, to your question. It's like, in business, we're talking about growth, we're talking about revenue, we're talking about results. We track everything from, how we efficiently we are using our assets to tracking our profits. But if I ask you this, if you operated behind the business, we're a business, would you be operating at a profit or a loss? Right. So that's a very, very interesting question, because told him, like, for me, if you'd asked me a few years ago, I would have said I was operating at a massive loss. Yes, on paper, successful banker, right? But energy tanking, right? My body is breaking down. Relationships on autopilot, living on caffeine, takeout, dopamine, and pretty much damage control. And as I said earlier, you cannot, run a high performance business on a low performance life, because guess what? Energy drives execution, right? Systems drive scale, and relationships pretty much through everything. So to your question, what I came up with, for me, I can just talk about myself and how it translated into me helping, or the leaders I'm helping with right now, and what I found was, I thought it was just me, is that yes, I was winning on the business side, on my career side, but I found there was a gap on my business. So on my health. So I worked on my health. I was like, right, okay, I found my relationships were not maybe we're supposed to be at. But how is it you can get that 360 success view? Because we always focus on these areas, things like, say, in the case of money and success, but success is nothing when one of those areas is actually missing. So in my case, I wrote playbooks. I started off by writing my own playbooks in those kind of key areas, so I can level myself up. In the case of energy, how I can level up on a daily basis. I have tools that will track how I show up on a weekly basis. I wrote playbooks on systems. I wrote playbooks on relationships and how I need to show up. So I'm actually accountable. Now, so what I found is, with the leaders I was working with, and we're talking about fitness, they came to me for fitness because they want to show up as their best. But when you're having a conversation, you find that actually they are physically at home, but not really present with the kids. They are physically present at home, but not really there with the partner, right? It's like, right, the partners, some actually, it was a story that was actually shared. It goes like, one of the partners actually said to, the wife said to leaders, like, it seems you spend more time with your clients than actually you spend time with me. It's things like that, right? But then, yes, so what I found is, most of these leaders, it could be winning in just one area. It could be in the case of like, you're crashing the numbers, in the case of like profits or whatever it is, or your business, you're crashing it. But it could be like your health is actually being sacrificed for that. Or it could be like maybe relationships are actually not where it's supposed to be. And the relationships, not just talking about at home, but we're talking about relationships even within your business. How is it that you can bring that energy when you walk into that room, right? And let that energy linger once you leave that room? How is it you can actually execute that? And that takes that conscious, deliberate effort to do that. And that's what I've found. So with that, actually, it was actually very funny, because for me, when we shared, because I've grown to know some of them and we become almost like friends, and I would say like, right, okay, for me, I had the same issues and I wrote this playbook. So they're like, right, okay, yeah, what's some playbooks? Can I have a look at it? Right. So I would share my playbooks, because, oh, Richie, these are so good. These are very, very helpful. Can you expand on this? Because those were my personal playbooks.
Yeah.
Can you expand on this a little bit? So I would record maybe some looms behind that and go deeper onto that. And that was pretty much the foundation of Operator's Edge. So it's those playbooks. I've got 8 playbooks, and they've actually expanded now into and going deeper into that. But they were initially my own personal playbooks. But I do refer back to those playbooks myself ever so often. Because you know what? We drift in life. So every week I have to make that conscious, deliberate effort to play back the tape for the past week. How did I do being in my relationship? How was my energy? How were my systems? What am I tolerating this past week that I can actually eliminate? Only when you do that, go like, right, okay, this is the area I was sort of like lacking. Which playbook can I pull out and just refresh myself and see how I can actually level up next week and invest a lesson from this week into next week?
Wow, that's incredible, and that's really good points I think you made there. I think one thing you really brought out to the forefront is personal accountability. Being able to look at your life, look at what you're doing, and being able to being able to say like, where did I waste my time? And I want to add just one thing to that is grace being permeating everything, right? Some people, it's hard for you to take accountability for yourself because you are so judgmental of others that you're going to judge yourself too hard. Give yourself some grace. Look, you're not an evil, good for nothing, worthless person because you made some mistakes. Like, that's one thing I want to say. I do want to pivot into a bit of nutrition. So I have a little bit of a joke, right? There's two main nutrients for a sales rep. That's caffeine and nicotine. Just and I'm not even gonna lie. I was thinking about this. I have been sipping on a Monster a few times.
I'm drinking on water.
I'm sorry if that offends you. But no, I think this conversation about energy is really important, because I have a friend who is a professional health insurance, sales rep, and there was a person in their company that was absolutely killing it, making $300,000 a year selling health insurance. And one day they found him. He had overdosed. He was doing drugs and doing cocaine and doing, I don't know all the drugs, but I would imagine, Adderall, cocaine. I don't really know, but he was doing drugs to keep himself energized to stay in the game. And that's why I think this conversation is so important, because people get desperate when they don't have that energy because they have to keep that winning. And when you are making $300,000 a year is a ton of money for help for
Yep.
anybody. You end up going these dark roads. So I know I know we've kept it lighthearted, but this conversation is a really serious conversation. So I do want to ask about nutrition, and I'm gonna make myself like the client for a minute. I have an addiction to fast food. Like I said, I love McDonald's. What steps would you take somebody who feels like they're limited on time, feels like they're, like they don't like healthy food, like vegetables or things of that nature? What are some basic action steps people can take to kind of help change that in their lives when it comes to their nutrition?
And that's a very good one, because I think nutrition is actually very, very key, because that's a fuel. It's a fuel that we put in our bodies. And that's pretty much drives how we show up in a lot of ways. Yes, we could about movement and everything, because we don't get energy. We generate energy, right, when it comes to movement. But food is one key piece. And it's all about having systems. That's the reason in my case I'm very, very big on systems. Like the second pillar in Operator's Edge is all about systems. So we can have systems so you can scale without burnout. Because the thing about it is, you want to create a system where, think about it like in the case of like brushing teeth, right? As kids, parents would go, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. It feels like, what? There is that a lot of friction there. But as we get older now, we're brushing teeth. We don't even think about it. Right. So we want to get to that point. Same, I think, with in the case of nutrition. When you have systems in place, it's so much easier, because the problem is we try to wing it. And when you try to wing it, you find you're busy. Life is busy. You come home, you're beat. The last thing you want is to cook, right? How is it you're going to cook? The easiest bit is we talk about convenience. McDonald's is just around the corner. There's always McDonald's around the corner. There's a Burger King. There is whatever it is, right? There's always those kind of things that you can tap into for convenience. But are they good for us? No. So how do you navigate that? Is having systems in place. Right. And like in myself, with my case, with my clients, I teach them it's systems that I have in place with things like, say, nutrition. How is it that, and again, there's always this thing about when you talk about nutrition as it has to be overly strict, it's only broccoli and chicken breast, whatever it is, right? Which can be quite very, very boring. That's not sustainable. How do you teach sustainable nutrition? Like with my clients in the fitness, when I was doing fitness, but this is still the centerpiece of Operator's Edge. I teach them how to eat, not what to eat. Because if you know how to eat and not prescriptive kind of what to eat, it's a lot more sustainable because it comes from within, right? So find the foods that you enjoy, right? And things like, say, having a system like in the case of meal prepping. Those are easy. It doesn't take very long on a weekend to do that. If you go to budget, there's now plenty of good meal prepping kind of companies that might actually do that for you, right? For things like that. But then it's also about knowing how you can structure your plate. As we get older, in the case you hit your 30s and it's all about the foods. Like we're talking about things like, say, protein. Protein, I don't think we tend to consume enough protein. I don't think that is spoken of enough. When we talk about protein shakes and all that, we're talking about protein from real food.
Right.
As we get older, we tend to start losing lean mass or mass as well due to sarcopenia, which is just a natural process. How is it we can counter that? Things like protein. Protein is key. One, it's a lot more satiating as well. It helps us retain that lean mass or mass that we need, which helps with fat loss as well. There's a thermic effect as well of protein, which comes with that. Is for every gram of protein that we can assume 30% of that goes towards actually the metabolism as energy, right?
Right.
Compare that to fats or carbs, which is just about 10%. So there is structure your plate in such a way that at least you have a good amount of protein there. And we tend to overconsume the carbs, you find the plate is normally heavy on carbs. Carbs are not bad. Carbs are good. We need carbs for energy, right? But we tend to normally have too much carbs and less protein. And you have plenty of carbs lunchtime, guess what's going to happen, right?
Crash all the way
Energy
down.
crashing. Exactly. So yeah, it's the same within the case of breakfast. You find heavy carb, heavy breakfast. What do you expect? By 10, 11, the energy has tanked. So it's more about the foods, the timing of when we eat the foods. Timing is also very, very key. Like start off the early part of the day. If there's one sort of like hack you can start incorporating is early part of the day, avoid carb heavy meals, leave the carbs for later in the day, right? And start off with more protein based foods. Because one, we talk about how protein not only is key for all those kind of good stuff you have, but also the fact that it's not gonna sort of like it's not as highly glycemic as say the carbs that are just gonna
Right.
spike your energy levels.
No, that's great advice, I think, as well, right? Like, and I think this theme of kind of this episode has been structure,
Planning, structure,
structure,
systems.
structure, structure. Because you said is right. Like, we drift, right? Like, why is people going to McDonald's when they know they shouldn't? Well, I didn't have my food prepped, or I didn't have food that I like prepared, right? Or I could have had maybe something that's a little less healthy, but a better alternative to McDonald's or to this fast food place. Maybe it was something that could have satiated my craving for some indulgence, but not so crazy. And I had that prepared and beforehand. And so I think that kind of plays real well kind of into our theme of like, your structure is going to be the thing that determines your success or your failure.
Absolutely. And can I just add to that as well?
Go ahead. Yeah.
The cravings part as well. For the most part, what has been found, for the most part, I've found this with a lot of my clients, is once the protein intake is on point, cravings do die down. Cravings, for the most part, is the body telling you we need these nutrients. And if you give your body potato chips, right, chicken flavored potato chips, the body will go like, right, okay, I can taste chicken. There's chicken here, but I'm not getting the nutrients. That's the reason you can go through a massive bag of potato chips. It doesn't fill you up. But guess what? You eat a chicken breast or chicken thigh, whatever it is, to fill you up. It's the nutrients. So most of the cravings come from lack of nutrients. So that is a signal, right? That is almost like a body, the feedback loop, right? What is missing here?
One question I have for you, I get a lot of different, this is just very technical question. I mean, how much protein, is it 1 gram per body of fat? Is it 1.5? Is it 0.8? I just kind of hear a lot of different stuff. What have you seen be the most successful thing for your clients?
I go, for me, the easiest word, I go for 0.75 to 1 gram per pound of your body weight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're 160 pounds, you should probably aim for 160 grams of protein a day.
Totally.
I think everything you said is, go ahead. You're gonna say something?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. That's right. Yeah, what you just pointed
Perfect.
out.
Yeah, and I think that's an easier system. And I think everything you said too about making it easier for yourself to be successful is super important. So we're coming kind of towards the end of our podcast. I think this has been a great episode. I think everything we've said that you have given us, Richie, has been phenomenal. So you have your own coaching program. You've helped clients, you've helped executives. For people that want to go through this program, how do they get in touch with you? How do they get involved with you and get coached by you?
Right. Yeah. The easiest way to reach me, I post pretty much on a daily basis on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my main platform, so you can reach me there. I'm on X as well, but yeah, if there's any questions, you want to best place to reach out to me is LinkedIn.
Awesome.
I'll be happy to have a chat. Yep.
What we'll do too is we will link the website for Richie in the link below on YouTube. We'll try to send a link for Spotify as well. Also, he has his book, Bank, Body and Bank. So go ahead and go get yourself a copy of that book as well if you want to work with him. Richie, we really appreciate you being on here. I have personally learned a lot. I really appreciate your graciousness with showing up today. And I look forward to, again, sometime in the future, have you back on to talk about more stuff.
Absolutely, Robert. Yeah. Awesome. It's been awesome, and looking forward to getting back here. I think there's plenty more to talk about. So yeah, that would be awesome.
For sure. All right, guys. Well, hey, listen, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. Share with your friends, share with your boss, share with your customers. Let everyone in the world know about it. And until we meet next time, keep selling. Boom.
Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Also be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Until next time, keep selling.